Hello, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for attending our talk. My name is Chin Yi Lo, and with me is Dr. Baoqi Soon from the National Institute of Education, Nanyang Technological University. Today, we're reporting on our four-year trend study, the impact of technology use on students' independent reading habits and practices. Independent reading is often associated with leisure reading, extensive reading, and reading for pleasure. I think what we want to emphasize on is the fact that students willingly read. And as they read more, they get better at reading and they are more able to pick up what Newman has called information capital from their reading. So, independent reading is important for traditional reading proficiency, academic achievement, but more importantly, for their own self directed learning to pick up more information and to understand the world. It is associated with well being, and they have the skills for deeper and critical reading. Research has also shown that students who are independent readers, who read more, are more likely to be more proficient with their digital reading proficiencies, which is an important skill in this day and age. Let me give you a little bit about the Singapore context. In Singapore, the literacy rate is 97.5%, which is amazing when you consider that in 1965, the year of Singapore's independence, the literacy rate was only 52.6%. We have a bilingual education system. What this means is that English is the main language of education and business, and that all our students take a second language or mother tongue, typically Chinese, Malay, or Tamil. Because English is the language of education, more than 70% of our primary one students or 7 years old do come from English speaking homes compared to previously. A thing to note is that while Singapore ranks highly on international tests, there is a concern with the growing gap between high and low proficiency students, where many of our low proficiency students, although they do better than the international average, their grades have tended to stagnate, whereas our high proficiency students have gotten better and better over the years. There is a strong emphasis on independent reading in primary school with time set aside for sustained silent reading, but uneven implementation in secondary school. Finally, it's important to note in the last 2 years that as a result of COVID-19, there have been physical school closures with an emphasis on online and blended learning. In 2017, Baoqi and I embarked on the Building a Reading Culture study. And as part of the study, we administered a survey to 6 representative secondary schools between February to April 2017. We also conducted focus groups with 96 students from these 6 schools to find out more about students' reading habits, reading enjoyment, as well as their reading on print and other forms of technology. In 2021, Baoqi and I wanted to follow up with this study to understand what the trends were given the changes in terms of technology as well as students' reading habits. So as part of the Designing School Libraries of the Future study, we administered a survey to 7 secondary schools between March to April this year and conducted focus groups with 37 students from one case study school. The focus groups were conducted online due to the restrictions this year. In line with the PISA 2018 data, which found that students enjoy reading less, read less frequently, and only read if they had to, we found in our survey that for all SES groups and overall, fewer proportions of students reported that they like to read, they read less frequently, and that they were more likely in 2021 to rank enjoyment-related reasons lower than functional reasons such as reading because they had to or because they wanted to improve their language. What we also found was that low SES students, so in our study we defined low SES students as students who are on financial assistance and whose parents did not have a university degree. So low SES students in both cohorts were more likely to rate improved language as their top reason for reading. High SES students are defined as students whose parents had a university degree and were not on financial assistance. So more high SES students are likely to enjoy reading, have more books at home, and see their parents reading.
In our 2017 survey, we asked the participants to rank the 5 types of devices for their preferences. As we can see here, print is ranked as the top choice, and then followed by smartphone, computer, tablet, and e-readers. It's very interesting to see e-readers, which is the only device designed for reading, is the least preferred. Based on our question of device ownership, students are less likely to own their own tablets or e-readers. In the focus group, students share with us some of their reasons for reading in print and on devices. Some reasons for print reading are related to better reading experience, and the reasons for reading digitally are related to it's easy to carry, or they can find reading materials more easily. We also examine the changes across grade levels. We focus on two types of devices. The grade level are from secondary 1 to secondary 4. Secondary 1 is about 13 years old, and secondary 4 is about 16 years old. As we can see, there is a steady increase in the usage of computer or mobile devices to read ebooks, articles, or newspaper articles across grade levels. And between the two types of devices, mobile devices are more popular than computer. That may be due to the fact that most teenagers have their own smartphone, and smartphones are easy to carry. Since devices are going to coexist with print when children grow older, a relevant question will be, do our students take to technology for reading? In our 2017 study, we found that students who reported they enjoy reading use technology differently from their peers who do not enjoy reading. Teenagers who enjoy reading tend to read more in print as well as on devices. In contrast, their peers who do not enjoy reading read less across all formats. From our focus groups, we found that students who enjoy reading tend to read longer text, whereas those who do not enjoy reading tend to spend more time on social media or games rather than reading.
One of the questions that we asked in the 2021 survey this year was about students' access to internet and devices. So if you look at the table there, 95.2% of the students have access to their own smartphone, which is a high percentage. Of course, we need to pay attention to those who do not have that as well. The other interesting number there is the fact that slightly over 80% do not have access to their own e-readers. So again, this specialized equipment is not something that most students have. Finally, if you look at computers or laptops, more than 90% have their own or shared computers or laptops. This is likely to change as since 2021 July, all students will have their own personal learning devices, whether it is tablet or laptop. So all secondary school students will have access to devices for learning. If you look at the 2017 and 2021 comparison in terms of preferred reading device, what was really interesting to us was the fact that in 2017, all the students preferred print, and smartphone was a close second. But in 2021, the smartphone has overtaken print, and it has become the top preferred reading device. This is followed by print, and at the bottom, you see e-readers still remain the least preferred reading device, probably again connected to ownership. We also asked students about their use of technology preferences by level. And in 2017, across secondary 1 to secondary 4, actually print was the preferred reading medium. But if you look at this table in front of you, you'll see that for the secondary 1 students, print is still the top preferred reading medium, but second is smartphone. But of course, more interestingly is that from secondary 2 to 4 onwards, smartphone has overtaken print as the preferred reading device. Although students expressed that they prefer the smartphone in the survey, what was interesting in the interview with the 36 students was that most of them preferred to use books for reading still. So if you look at the first quote, Felicia says that she prefers the feel of turning pages. Now, Dan is an avid reader, and he's one of those who told us that he read more online. He's familiar with reading the NLB app, the National Library app, which gives students access to free books. So he finds that it's more convenient to use technology for reading and that it gives him more access to more books. What I find particularly interesting in the third quote is when Jen talks about how you're not distracted when you're using a print book. She says that if you have a hard copy book, you can at least take your time to read and then leave your phone at the side. So this suggests that the phone actually is a distraction for some readers. Finally, for students who have ebooks, we found out that their purchase of the ebooks is should coexist with access to books. Unless their parents actually purchase books for them, most of them did not necessarily have access to an ecosystem or a subscription. We also found that adolescents who enjoy reading show different reading patterns from those who do not. So, as you can see from this diagram, all teenagers read social media posts, but students who enjoy reading are more likely to engage in reading fan fiction, discussion website, news articles, as well as personal essays. So, they were more likely to read online and use their phones for reading. As you can see from the quotes, they would browse through the news. They might get news from online platforms and through social media platforms, but they would also go to Wattpad, which is a fan fiction site, to look for books. Another pattern we saw was that adolescents who enjoy reading, and this is similar to the 2017 survey, are more likely to use tech for reading. So you can see that adolescents who enjoy reading read a lot more on print, read more using the smartphone, read more using the computer, as well as e-readers and tablets. So again, this quote from Dan, right, showing that he would go to the bookstore, the physical bookstore, look at the books that were on display, and then make use of technology to find more books to read. And because he knew he could borrow e-books from the National Library, he would borrow them instead of buying them. Here's Gaia, another reader, who explained to us that she would go online and use social media platforms such as TikTok to find more books to read.
We also look at the relationships between students' reading habits and their frequency of leisure activities. This table shows 5 leisure activities, reading, and 4 other activities using devices. Of course, the frequency of reading as a leisure device is highly correlated with reading enjoyment, frequency, and duration. On the other hand, the other 4 device-related leisure activities, such as playing games, browsing social media, watching videos, and watching TV, are negatively correlated with reading enjoyment, frequency, and duration. This suggests that device usage may conflict with reading. Here are some quotes from our focus group. The first one shows us that reading is something the student would choose to do if only he or she was really bored or the phone was taken away. The second one shows us that the participants knew about the National Library app. However, time is an issue for him or her to use it. The last one shows us the difficulty in locating online reading materials.
So what are some implications for engaging adolescents' independent reading? Firstly, we need to teach students to search for age-appropriate and high-interest reading materials online. We shouldn't assume that just because they have technology, they're going to be using the technology for reading. So I think as educators, what we need to realize is that just as we might put aside time for students to read print books, we need to put aside time to socialize students into reading digitally. And this can be done by scaffolding their reading, by teaching them how to use the NLB app and Libby, which is freely available in the Singapore context, through regular usage and practice. And finally, one more suggestion we have is that we need to sustain reading by integrating reading programs and curriculum both into face-to-face and online lessons. I think in the Singapore context, what happened when we had to rush into online lessons during the circuit breaker last year, where there was a full month of online lessons, many teachers were unequipped and not ready to integrate reading into their online lessons. But now that we've had more time to reflect and think about it, we want to ensure that students do not lose out on their reading when we move into a situation where there's blended or online learning. So it's important to consider how we can sustain reading in these different learning contexts through both using print as well as other forms of technology.